Good afternoon, welcome back to another stream. So this is a continuation of a video series around an introduction to halal investing. In the previous videos, we've discussed some introduction, concepts when it comes to what actually is investing, some terminology. We then looked at what is halal investing, the filtering, aspects. Then we looked at sort of creating a portfolio that is not so risky. You're not putting all your eggs in one basket. So in those last few videos, I mentioned an application that you can use as an Australian. That is a fintech application, a financial technological application for investing in halal funds in Australia and in the US, called Stake. So this particular video is going to be doing an introduction into how to actually use Stake. Is one that has been requested, so I thought I'll make sure I cover it. So important disclaimers: I am not a financial advisor. I have studied financial planning and I've been learning about sort of finances and money probably for nearly 2 decades, quite a while. But my intent with this is just purely take it as entertainment, like edutainment, but really it's just to empower you when it comes to understanding financial concepts, not for you to take anything that I say as financial advice. So always consult a financial advisor or planner. My hope with my video series is that you'll just be better informed, and so you won't be going in completely blind and having them take you on a ride and you think, oh yeah, this is great. So yeah, it's really just to empower you financially so that when you do talk to an advisor, you'll make a more informed decision. Okay, so let's get started. So I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, so when you first join Stake, so there is a link that you can access through my description. It is a referral link, so if you do join through my link, you get some kind of bonus. It may vary depending on what you watch. It may vary depending on when you watch this video. But at the moment, for example, you can get discount on brokerage fees, on actual fees when you buy or sell any stocks or shares. So the first thing I want to touch on is why I personally like Stake in comparison to other ways you can invest in the stock market or share market. So I used to invest through CommSec, which is a very popular one in Australia. It's attached to Commonwealth Bank. So to give you an idea, they may have reduced it now, but the cost of buying, shares, just one buying transaction or one selling transaction is $20. Whereas with Stake, the cost of buying or selling one transaction, in other words, one transaction is only $3. So this is Australian. And then through CommSec, if you actually want to buy international shares, such as Wall Street, back then it was like $100 for just buying a certain amount or selling a certain amount, so one transaction. Whereas through Stake, to purchase US shares like Wall Street, it's $3 for one buying or one selling transaction. So you can understand why I really like Stake. And plus, if you are already investing and you are you have a portfolio, with CommSec, or maybe your own bank has its own brokerage platform. Brokerage is just the term for people who are new when it comes to a platform that allows you to access these markets, and they obviously charge a brokerage fee. But yeah, as mentioned, Stake has very low fees, which is why I really like them. The other reason why I like Stake is because the minimum investment amount is a lot less compared to I guess if you look up, halal investment funds, you may actually find that you can invest directly with certain companies. But if you check what's the minimum amount before you can even buy into these funds, it can be a lot, like thousands. Like I had a friend say she found one and the minimum investment amount was 5,000. So this usually means it's not as accessible to someone who's newer, who wants to start using using it as almost a savings account, but especially for Muslims, want to use it as like a halal savings account that potentially can grow, but obviously it can also go down. So yeah, please do watch the rest of my previous videos so you have a better understanding about just everything that's involved. And yeah. Okay, so now let's actually look at stake. So when you first join stake, it'll obviously ask you for just the usual personal information like your name, address, etc., some sort of ID verification. It will also ask you what markets you would like to have access to. So obviously, I recommend access to both Australia and the US just for the extra options. So this is where you're taken to when you first log in, the dashboard. And so obviously when you first join, you need to add money. And as you can see, this is what the current bonuses are if you do join through my referral link. So if you add money to the Australian sort of part, you get a $10 bonus. And if you add money to the Wall Street part, you get a free stock. So yeah. So that's the first thing I want to talk about is adding funds. So essentially you just click add funds and it asks which balance. So I'm just going to go Australian because once you've got money in your account, you can actually move it across to the Wall Street side or the US dollars side. So just go Australian, you put in your amount and then it'll prompt you in terms of your options. So if I go, let's say 500. So then if I go next, it'll ask you, how do you want to deposit this? So this is really key. So you'll notice you can do more instant, but obviously you'll lose some money in fees. But yeah, so essentially shows you this is what they recommend, just this new feature, pay to. But otherwise you absolutely can use your cards, but there are going to be fees. So there's 0.5% if it's a debit card or debit, but if it's credit, it's 2.5%. You can do bank transfer as well. So I'm just going to stick to this. So then they actually now give you the option of adding to your fund on a more regular basis. So, every time you get paid, for example, so you really can treat it like this savings account that you're able to hopefully, inshallah, God willing, grow your wealth. So I'm just going to say just once. I'm actually not going to go forward and do this, but you get the idea. So you just click submit and it'll prompt you to actually add that money. So what I actually want to talk about is if you're adding to the US balance, so that's really key. So even if you already have some Australian dollars that you've added and you try to move it across, you'll see a button to convert to US or move to your US balance. There are conversion fees. So that's really, really key. So you'll notice that it's not really a percent per se. It's sort of a flat fee, but it depends on how much you put in. So that's something I recommend just playing around with if you do want to fund into this area. So for example, if I only want to put 100 and then I go next. So there's a few things. One is, again, how do you want to do it? But two, how fast do you want it in your account? So if you want it really fast, there's obviously a fee. So personally, I don't mind waiting, so I would just choose regular. And again, I'm not going to go every single time, on a regular basis for now. I'm just going to say just once. But at the moment, if I put in $100, it's going to cost me $2. So in the end, I'm going to get 63.1 US dollars. So if I change this, I go edit and I change this to 500. So you'll see the fee is actually $3.50. So as a percent of what I'm putting in. Obviously, the more you put in, the less the fee is, and thus the less money you're losing to fees. So just to compare the difference, so $2 out of 100 is 2%, whereas $3.50 out of 500 is 0.0, that is 0.7%. So obviously that's way, way better. So in other words, like you want to save up a bit more before you fund the US side. That would be just more financially viable or better fees wise. So yeah, and obviously that tells you the amount that it'll become that you can work with. So that is firstly how to fund your account. So once you've funded your account, the next thing I want to talk about is a watch list. So in the dashboard, you're already going to see watch list that they've created for you. So you can have a look at it here, but there's a watching section. So that's usually where I like to go first. So I can add the halal funds that I know of, and I can then more quickly access them when I need them. So I go to watching, so then it shows me the Australian market. This is a list that they've created for me that are just maybe some popular ones. And then whereas the US market, this is a list that they've created for me with some popular shares. So in my case, I want to stick to just halal funds. So I'm just going to completely delete this list. So I literally just go ... delete. But let's say, you actually, maybe with the US, you might be like, oh, Tesla, I've already done my research. I know what halal investing is. I have done in depth, look at the company financials, and I know how to filter out companies. So you absolutely can invest directly. So if there's any shares here that you're like, actually, I do want to keep it. So you could simply just go here, and as you can see, you can actually remove what you don't want. So I don't want Facebook. Tesla's fine. That's fine. That's fine. And then I don't want this one. So you can do that. But also you can rename the list. But what I'm going to show you is just making a completely new list. But as you can see, I click ... so I can rename the list, delete, etc. So I'm just going to go delete. So once I have deleted, so I'm going to do the same with the US. So now I just click add new list. What do I want to name it? So I'm just going to say Halal AU funds. And then I'm going to do the same for the US. I'm going to say Halal US funds. Okay. So obviously I don't have anything here, so I can just click add stock while I'm here. But otherwise, from any screen, you'll actually notice this search bar. By the way, Stake does have a mobile app, so obviously it's going to look quite different in the app, but the same kind of concept in terms of you'll have a dashboard, you'll be able to go to your watch list, and obviously there's a place where you can search. So anywhere you just go search. So there are some halal funds I've already mentioned in the previous video. So let's go with the Australia ones first. So a company that gives you access to halal funds like in Australia and includes halal bonds, which I discussed in previous videos. So definitely check those out. Is Hejaz, so Hejaz. So I'm just going to look up Hejaz, and you'll actually notice in Australia, there it is. So I'll just go with top to bottom. So we'll start with this one, Hejaz high income. So now we're going to talk about just how you navigate this page, just a quick intro. So one is you've got the name of the fund. So this is a high income ETF, where ETF stands for Exchange Traded Fund. So I talk about this in the earlier videos. So first thing is you can actually change the range that you're seeing the actual chart. So at the moment, we're looking at how the price has moved in a day. I can change it to a week, and it will adjust, as you can see. I can change it to 6 months. And there you go. I can make it 5 years, etc., etc. So you have the ability for people who have done a little bit more in investing to change it to candlestick charts. So personally, I love candlestick charts. They just tell you much more of a story. But if you're interested, let me know in the comments. But that's a totally other video. I might just stick to the yearly chart. So how has the price moved for the year? So that's just how to look at the chart over time. So then key thing is I want to add this. I don't want to purchase yet. I haven't funded my account, but instead of me having to find it every time, I want to add it. So you'll see pretty straightforward. I've got this little plus symbol here. There's a few ways. I click add to watch list, add the plus, etc., etc. So whatever, makes most sense to you. So then it asks me where do I want to add it to. So it shows me my Australian watch list. So I created that one already earlier. I hit plus and that one is done. So I'm going to do the same for the others. I just look up Hejaz. So I've done the first one and essentially I'm just going to add each one. So look at this one. Add. Done. So let's just do one more just as that demo, and let's do the property one. And then again, add. Actually, I will do one more, the bonds. So look at Hejaz. So have a look. Which one? Sukuk. So Sukuk is Halal bonds. So again, I've already discussed that in a previous video. So we go add. So I'll just do those for now. So same idea with the US. So with the US, the company that you might have even seen ads for by famous, Muslim athletes like Habib, the Russian MMA fighter, Sheikh Mufti Menk, he has done some promo videos for them, but it's called Wahed, W-A-H-E-D. So if I look up Wahed, so obviously nothing in Australia, but there it is. So they have a stock fund for the FTSE market and then Dow Jones. So I'm going to click this one. And then I click add to watch list, and obviously it'll show me my US funds watch list. And last one, Wahed, the other market, the Dow Jones. And then, I do want to highlight two other funds I've mentioned previously that are also halal funds in the US market. So one is SPUS. Here it is. So this is a Sharia ETF as well. So I'm just going to go again, add. And this one is stock based. So in other words, it is the S&P 500. That's a market in the US, and it's an ETF that sort of matches that or follows that. So then the last one that I have found in my research that's in the US is SPRE. So this is a global halal REIT, real estate investment trust. So as I mentioned in previous videos, this is literally how you can invest in property with way less money than like getting a massive loan in the bank, etc. So yeah, so we've done the adding of our funds. So let's go back to watching now. So now I can see all my halal funds in Australia and all my halal funds if I click Wall Street in the US. So let's now talk about how to actually purchase a stock. And it'll be the same process whether it's an ETF or it's an individual stock like Apple, for example. So let's go with just Australia. So let's go with, I'm going to go with the property fund. So firstly, just to understand what is this fund. So we talked about looking at the chart, but as you go down, it gives you sort of just some information about it. So one is obviously you've got the title. As I go a bit further down, some statistics, what's the lowest price, what's the lowest price in the last year, high and low, etc., etc. So you'll notice that it doesn't give you more in-depth stuff about the fund. So this is something you have to purchase as like a, subscription, an upgrade. But I find that if you just want some information, I just go to like a place like MSN Money, like another website. So it does give you a lot more information about the company. Otherwise, you can go to actual Hejaz, their website, and obviously they'll give you the most in-depth information about them. But the key thing I want to highlight is what is it? So this is where you get a summary of what exactly is this fund putting money into. So in other words, if I put money towards this fund, where does my money get invested? So the Hejaz Property Fund, it's an exchange traded fund, ETF, that offers investors a simple way of accessing diversified portfolio of investments across REIT, real estate investment trusts, including international and domestic. So in other words, your money gets invested in international properties as well as local Australian properties, because this is an Australian company. But yeah, for as little as actually we'll find out. I think 500 in the Australian side. The US I think is a bit more flexible from memory. But how do we actually buy? So pretty obvious on the screen. You'll see the buy button. So when I click it, this is the part that will confuse people, and I've had friends ask me about. So there's different ways you can enter the market. So it explains it here with a little I. So you can make a limit order, you can make a market order, and you can make a stop order. So the ones that I really ever use is limit and market, but majority of the time I just use market, just because I'm not really, short-term trading. Trading being, I'm not buying and planning to sell within a week, for example. So the little price movements up and down, they don't really matter to me, because I'm planning to just buy, hold it for years, and really maybe only sell just to rebalance my portfolio, which is something I touched on a little bit in a previous video, but I might talk about if you want to, let me know. Okay, so what do these mean? So we click the little I and it gives us a little definition for each. Limit order is basically where you set a price. So this is the current price, $0.865. So in other words, 86.5 cents for one sort of share in this fund. So a limit order is you're buying a share at the limit price, the maximum price you're willing to buy. So in other words, your order will only be executed at your price or less. So at the moment, it's 0.86. So I would set a limit price of, for example, in other words, I'm thinking, you know what, I think the money, I don't want to spend as much as 86.5 cents. I want to spend less. So I want to put in 0.86. So what happens is when I set how many shares I want, so let's just say 100, it tells me, actually no, as you can tell, I think it is a minimum. Yep, for Australian, it's 500. So in other words, I can say, okay, but based on this, I'm going to put $500 worth. I still need a little bit more. So remember, the brokerage fee is $3, so that should be fine. So in other words, I will go, I want it for this price, and the minimum spend is 500 for the Australian stock market. I've factored the fee, which I mentioned was $3. And so I say review and I say place the order, and what will happen is the platform will wait, and if the price goes down to the amount that I'm hoping it will go down to, then the order gets executed, and then it'll sort of follow through with getting settled, and eventually it'll show in my holdings. In other words, what I hold in my portfolio. So that's what a limit order is. So that's essentially where you want to, like, you think the price might go down a bit and you want to save money. You want to try and get it for a better price, essentially. So the market order is, we don't care too much about the price. It's going to go up and down, but you're thinking long term. So whatever the price is at the market, you really just want to get it as soon as is possible. And it's now going to be in your portfolio after it gets settled, which I'll explain in a moment. So that's what a market order is. Essentially, the order to buy immediately at the current price. So this key thing, though, about this is you can only place a market order during trading hours. So in other words, if it's the Australian stock market, it's 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. And for the US market, it'll be in the US, market hours, which would be New York time. So it'll be like, 9 p.m. at night, essentially. So that's a reason why you might want to do the limit order. So what you could always do is, if you want to set up to order right now, before you go to bed, and you don't want to wait till the market opens. So then what I typically do is I just set it as what the current price is, and then I continue forward. So that's what the limit order versus market order is. A stop order is slightly different. So a stop order will purchase the stock when the value goes up to a set price. So this is in the case of so the stop order must be set above the current market price. So this is where you're expecting that the price is going to go up, and essentially you just want it to purchase the stocks, and you can't be there when the market is around. So that's where you're setting the price to 66, for example. So it has to be higher than the current market price, which is this value here. So generally I would just do this, just market price in those market hours, but otherwise you would choose limit for a price lower than this, or stop for a price higher than this, and you would just follow through. And so this is another key thing, is expiry. So what does it mean by expiry? So it means that when you're choosing a limit order or a stop order, you're basically guessing the price. It's not the current price. So you don't actually know if it's truly going to go up, if it's stop, or if it's truly going to go down, if it's stop. So in the case where it never reaches that price, so let's say you think it's going to go down, it ends up going up and up and up. So then this will never execute. It will never actually follow through and place that order for you. So this is asking you, when do you want this sort of order to be valid? So 30 days means it's going to keep waiting and searching for that price for the next 30 days. So you don't have to constantly look at it and check, is that price yet or not? It will do that for you. But you can make it for 3 months. You can make it, I just want it today, by the end of the day. So that's sort of up to you. So I just leave it as a default as 30. But I mean, if you want to actually purchase the stocks, I would just check and see if it's executed or not, and then adjust the price. So you can adjust the price after the fact. But yeah, that's basically how you purchase the stock. So once you've purchased the stock, then it will show in your holdings. That's the holding section, as you can see after dashboard. So it will not only show you, just your total amount, but it will actually show you your return and the percent return. So that means that, let's say I bought, $500 worth of that property fund, that Halal property fund with Hejaz. So it'll show here today 500 or so. How many shares was that? It's about 500 and something, as it showed us earlier. What is the current market value? 500 or so. What's the price per share? 86 cents or so. What's the day's change? So obviously not really much change because I only purchased it today, but the daily profit or loss. So for the last 24 hours, has it increased or decreased from the previous day? But this is a key thing. What is the return value-wise and percent-wise? So let's say I check this in 6 months' time, and the overall property market has really done well, and so this ends up being worth more. So it was worth 500, but now it's worth $600. So this will show me a return of $100, and percent-wise, 100 out of 500, that should be 20%. So it'll show a return of 20, which is actually very high. You're not going to get that. A 10% return is actually generally really good for investments. It's a pretty sort of conservative and a good return, but yeah, any return is good with investments actually. But 10 is considered very good or pretty good. So anything higher is like, okay, this is probably not going to be forever, or it's something's going on. In particular, it's for such a short period, like in 6 months, you get a 20% return. Like that's just not even heard of. Like it's very rare, unless it's some very high risk thing. Which in the case of these halal funds, it's essentially a whole huge group of tons and tons of either companies, if it's a stock fund, or properties. So it just lowers your risk because you're not chucking all your eggs in one basket of one single property or one single company. So if one company's down, doesn't matter because there's 50 others that are doing okay, if that makes sense. So yeah, so that is your holdings, and where you can see how they're doing essentially. But other than that, I mean, the last section here is markets. So this just basically just shows you just some general things about the markets, Australian and the US, what's trending. So this is less important if you already know, in watching what you want to, invest in, that is, following Sharia compliance, etc. But yeah, otherwise, you've got your little wallet symbol at the top here, so you can see your funds and overall. You've also got active orders. So I mentioned how you can place an order, I want to buy this, etc. So this is where you can see essentially your orders, etc. But otherwise, obviously you've got your menu where you can actually do things like your tax documents, because obviously if you start investing, you do need to put that in your tax documents if you've made any money, or even if you've lost money from selling. Yeah, but obviously talk to an accountant about that. They'll tell you what you need, but it gives you the place where you can get everything that you should need for your accountant. But yeah, other than that, that does bring us to the end of just an intro on how to actually navigate stake. But yeah, do let me know in comments if you have any questions, or if there's something more specific you want me to cover. And just depending on if it's within my knowledge, because like I said, I'm not a financial expert. So if it is something that I've already learned about, I'd be very happy to share. But other than that, yeah, thank you for listening, and yeah, like and subscribe if you find the information useful. But more importantly, like, do share it with people that you think it might also benefit. Yeah, thank you for listening.